Hello, everybody. This is part 3 of my life story. Part 1 and 2 are right before this on YouTube. Um, so, last we left off, I was in Little Five Points, Atlanta, hanging out with all the homeless people outside that night. And we had a good night. Some people were playing guitar, playing music. People are drinking, smoking. Some people are doing other things. I never got involved in that, thankfully. And so it was a pretty good night. And the next day turned into a few weeks. I was just in Atlanta every day. Well, let me back up a little bit just for real quick to tell you that when I was in Rochester, I met other homeless people. I don't know how much I mentioned this in my previous videos. I met other homeless people in Rochester, like I said before, and they taught me how to be homeless, how to ask people for money, how to fly a sign saying you need money, or ask people for spare change, and how to hitchhike and stuff like that. So when I was in Atlanta, I met people who were doing the same thing, other homeless people of all ages. Some of them were my age in their teenage years. Some were young adults, some were older, so homeless people of all ages. In the bigger cities, you see a lot more bigger homeless communities. So, for the next few weeks, I was just doing that, asking people for spare change around that area. And we had this term we call white boxing or white boxes. It's like when people come out of the popular restaurants around the area, they have like usually a white box or something of leftovers, and you just ask them like, hey, can I have your leftovers? And a lot of times that, restaurants cut a sandwich in half and there'll be an untouched half of a sandwich or something like that. But we would just eat after people. Even if it was fries or anything that it might have been eaten out of, whatever, we would just eat after people. So it was a humbling experience. It was, I felt really free at the time because, like I said in my previous videos, I was grounded by my parents for a lot of my teenage years. I had to just do chores and stuff. They said, I wasn't allowed to like go hang out with my friends or anything like that. So I felt like I had friends, and I could just do whatever I wanted, within reason, within the law. But a few weeks later, like I think it might have been actually a month and a half to 2 months later. I forget exactly how long it lasted. That I was just hanging out there doing the same thing every day, getting money to get some weed to smoke. Sometimes I would drink with people. There's a few stuff that gone down there. So let me explain a few stories that went down Little Five Points before I explain how I left Little Five Points. This one's pretty embarrassing to me to explain, but I think it's cool to talk about or remember and to tell people about. Even though it is very embarrassing, I feel like a dork for this whole thing, right? But to give some context also, on my Facebook, I'm friends with a lot of other communists and socialists and leftists and people who care about social justice. And I met this lady, she's in the UK now, one time, and she was telling me that she was in the 5 Points in like the 80s or 90s or something, and that they would come together against racists and push racists out of there and stuff. And I told her, yeah, I had to say, I remember doing the same thing. And I remember thinking to somebody to just read in the comments, they might be like, oh, that I think I'm just saying that, but not. Here's an instance where that actually happened, right? So there was this older white homeless person messing with this other black homeless person, older black homeless person. The homeless black person wasn't doing anything. He was just sitting on the bench, in Little Five Points in the Burke area. Now they don't have the benches anymore. I went back like a year or two ago, and this was in 2014, I think. Yeah, 2014. They have benches in Little Five Points in the little area right in the middle where all the stores are, but now they don't have them anymore. So, anyways. You know, he's giving him a tough time. He's like yelling at him and talking shit to him. I forgot if he was telling him to leave or not, but he was saying, I'm pretty sure I remember him saying the N-word, you know. So me and some other people, we go up and we start trying to stand up for this guy, like, yo, back off and all this. They're telling him back off. And me, you know, at this time, I was around all these hippies and I'm believing in all this spiritual stuff. So this is the part where I'm embarrassed and I think I was a dork, you know, because they're standing around him and I'm standing with them, but I'm holding my hand out like this. I had a necklace that had like the Hamza, the Indian like symbol, like the hand with the little. Maybe that's why I did it. Thinking back now, I don't know why, but I just felt like I was like in some power, just holding this like. I feel so, like I said, I feel so much like a dork for even admitting it, but I felt like I was like spiritually doing something, okay? But anyways. So for a while it was a standoff. Nobody was gonna like really beat this guy up because I think it was me, a woman, and some other guy my age or something. But then Brooklyn, this guy from New York who he was black himself, and he was a buff guy, but he was a really cool guy, you know. I was good friends with him, and he was always around. Unfortunately, he passed from this world. A few years later, I actually saw it on Facebook. It was so crazy to me, the coincidence. I know Facebook is supposed to show you stuff like that, like of your friends, like that they think you is important, but I was like, wow, without that random time of logging into Facebook, scrolling down my newsfeed and seeing his funeral invitation thing, then I would have never known, you know. It's crazy. But Brooklyn comes up and he's like, yo, what the fuck is wrong with you? And he started, and the guy, as soon as Brooklyn was walking up, the guy starts running away, you know, and he chases him all the way down the block, you know. So that was one story. You know, I had some good friends there. I remember. I forgot if I called him something else, but I think I did call him Andrew. I had him on Facebook, and my buddy Crash. Andrew and Crash were always together. They were real cool. They were like a little bit older than me, but we would all hang out. There's just a lot of people I met there. We had a lot of good times, a lot of deep moments, but some of them are just like crazy, and like some of them were traumatizing moments I had in Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to go too deep. Maybe another time I will. But anyways, so let's continue from there. From Little 5 Points. Okay, wait. Look, there was one thing more that I can mention. This guy from Trinidad. I met other people from Trinidad before I met this guy, you know, but he had a Rastafari shop in Little 5 Points, and he was real nice to me. You know, I would go in there and talk to him, and one time I was so dirty, but I was wearing flip-flops. He's like, you don't got, he points down at my feet, he's like, you don't gotta be so dirty, you can go wash yourself, you know. He told me about this fountain in this park, like down the road, that's on. He's like, go there early in the morning, just wear your shorts, and you can wash yourself off. And he gave me this soap, this African soap called Black Soap, you know. And, you know, I would go there and talk to him sometimes and stuff like that. And he was a real cool guy, you know, like an elder figure, you know, in the community, you know. He was real cool, you know. So a few years later, when I went back to Little 5 Points in 2021, he had died also, and I didn't find out until I went to the shop, and it was some woman working, and I asked them about him, and turns out they had a shrine for him in the shop, you know, and I put a little offering there, and it was very emotional, you know, knowing that he passed on, cause you know, thinking back, like he told me something he told me one line that always stuck with me and that I've repeated so many times. He said, no matter what, you always gotta take care of yourself first. He said, you can't help anybody until you help yourself. So you always have to put yourself first. And you know, self-preservation is a real thing. You know, we gotta make sure that we can survive. You know, so that impacted me for a lot of years. I'm like, before I became a communist, you know, I always just thought about my own self-preservation. You know, but now I figured out I can still contribute towards, you know, a greater cause, you know, but of course I always gotta make sure that I'm able to survive, and everybody needs to do that, you know. So you gotta do what you gotta do to survive, you know. But so that was another good experience later when 2021 when I went back to 5 Points, the woman there, she gave me some of the black soap, which was real nice of her, and I gave her some of my pamphlets that I wrote about communism and talked to her, and we had a real emotional discussion, you know. So okay, let's go back. It's 2014. I'm in Atlanta, and then one night, you know, we're just chilling on one of the benches in the little it's called like the little park area. It's called the park. It's not really a park. It's just like a little triangle sliver where all the 5 points of the roads come together. A little triangle sliver where there's some trees, and it's right next to the stores. And there was some benches there, but the benches are gone now. But at this point, the benches were still there. So we're chilling on the benches, and this white boy comes up, and he looks. I feel like he's younger than me, but he's actually older than me, you know. But just the way he acted and the way he looked, I felt like he was younger than me, you know. But apparently he was in college, you know, or something. And he's asking us if we can smoke around here. We're like, yeah, roll up, you know. So he starts trying to roll this spliff, right? A spliff is a mixture of tobacco and weed, and he's trying to roll it up, and he's taking so long, like 5 minutes, right? And he's like, and then he starts asking if we can go somewhere else or something, and then some of the people were like, y'all stupid. I think Brooklyn was like, y'all stupid, man. Fuck that, man. I ain't going on. He was smart, but me and two or three other people went with him behind the stores in the parking lot, and he finally finished rolling it up, and he takes a few puffs. He passes it to me, and I only get like 2 puffs, and it's mostly tobacco. But I'm like taking these 2 puffs, and then all of a sudden I see a cop roll by, and then the white boy, the kid, he just jumps up and he yells, "Police!" and just starts running. And the cop just pulls right over and gets out of the car and says, "Hey, stop!" And then he stops. So me and the other guys pretty much think it was some kind of setup or something, but I have no idea. Well, one guy did have a warrant there, so maybe. But the way he acted, like, it seems like a setup. Like, how could you act that stupid, you know? Because the cop was just riding by, you know, he wasn't bothering anyone or nothing. So as soon as he did that, I dropped you know, looking back, maybe I could have had time to eat it, but I didn't think that fast. You know, that would have been the best option if I would have been able to, but he probably would have saw me or something. But I just dropped it, and there's a lot of leaves under me. I didn't think they would find it. Bruh, this cop brought 2 more cops out there. They looked for like 45 minutes and finally found this fucking spliff that barely had any weed in it. It was mostly tobacco, and they're like, "Oh, it looks like tobacco." Like, nope, it smells like weed. I see a little bit of weed in it. I'm like, man, for real? Y'all really about to charge us for that tiny bit of weed? But yes, we went to jail. We went in the paddy wagon. You know, to someone raised in California, that would seem crazy. Okay, 17 years old, I'm getting put in the paddy wagon. You know, the big little vehicle that they put the people that they're taking to jail in. You know, with 2 or 3 something other adults. and we're going to jail because a tiny bit of weed and a little bit of spliff, 4 people going to jail. So it's crazy, the laws are so far behind in the southern states of the United States. And it's like that in North Carolina too. I would still go to jail at that time, probably in North Carolina. But North Carolina now, it's where it's just a ticket if it's just possession. But in Atlanta, I don't know if they decriminalized it yet. If they haven't yet, then it's still, you go to jail for they can take you to jail for just a little bit of weed. Anyways, went to jail and let me try to think. I forgot if the times. No, I think it was the second time I went to jail that a lot of the stuff I remember happened. Cause I have a lot of memories from. Yeah, I think that was when I was in jail for like 2 weeks. But so this is a time where I gotta give credit to my mother and stepfather at this point. It might have been better if they would have just let me stay there, because it was a lot more hassle in the long run. But because it would have only been like a week in jail versus having to pay all that money and like $1,000. It was like $700. When I was 17 years old, the only time they ever tried to help me out for getting in trouble. My mother, she and my stepdad helped me out. They got me out like a day or two later, and they wanted me to come back to North Carolina, right? After I stayed, they had a friend that lived outside Atlanta somewhere, right? One of my stepdad's friends growing up moved out there. So they wanted me to stay with them and then until my court date and then come back to North Carolina. So I had no other option. So I did. I stayed with them for a few weeks. For a few weeks, I was in. I forgot what even town it was. It was like one of the towns outside of Atlanta, small town. I don't think it's Gainesville. I think that's something else, but it was something like that. And after a day or two there, I walked up to Sonic. I was walking around and I saw a bunch of teenagers hanging out in a Sonic. I was like the hangout spot. Suppose I walked up. I was asking them like, where's the weed at? And they were like, we started talking. They ended up being able to help me out. I started hanging out with them, and I hung out with those kids for like the next few weeks until my court date. I never saw them again, but they were pretty cool, And I'm glad I found them, because without that, it would have been a much harder 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So I went to my court day and they wanted to give me community service. They said they could transfer it to North Carolina. I went to North Carolina. I never even followed up with it. It will come back to bite me later. I'll tell you about that. It might not be this video, probably the next video. So went back to North Carolina and I remember sometimes on this point, it wasn't for that long. It was for like a month or 2 or 3. Okay, I think I got back to North Carolina in November and left in February. And for a time, at this point, my mother and stepfather actually were living in this like what they call the pool house. It's just this little like structure right next to this pool that my stepdad's parents had outside their house, and because they sold their house that they got from Habitat for Humanity. It's a long story. So they were living with his parents, and I was staying there for a few months. And I, I spent some time with some friends I had growing up, but I had this dream, this vision of going out to California and being a musician or something. Just going to California. Something about California really drew me. Really wanted to go there in the first place, but it didn't happen, and I ended up in jail or whatever. So this time I set out with a mission to go to California. So at this point, I'm 17 years old. It's February 2015. I turned 17 the last year in June. So I would turn 18 in a few months. And from that time, from February to June of 2015 is when I went from, the first thing I did is I actually went on a freight train because I met some homeless people who travel by hopping on freight trains, not passenger trains, like trains that carry supplies, and so I learned how to do it from them, but I never really did it before. They told me how to do it and everything, but I didn't hop out with them anywhere, train hoppers. But so I already knew how to do it, and I was actually gonna go hop out of my hometown, New Bern, North Carolina, where I grew up, with a friend. And this guy says he's gonna go with me, and I was pretty excited because it was a whole adventure I had the first time, and I thought, it would be great to show somebody that adventure. But he ended up chickening out. Okay, so it was pretty depressing. I was all on my own, and it rained. It rained on my way to Raleigh. So it was a good thing I brought a tarp and a sleeping bag. I had a big backpack, and so I put the tarp over me when the rain, and I didn't actually get too wet, but it was when I had to leave the train and it was still raining, and I was in Raleigh and I was walking to try to find some shelter under the rain. I got pretty wet, and that's how I got to Raleigh from New Bern, from a freight train. It was like a car carrying these railroad rocks. Okay, and I climbed up into it and went into a corner of it, and it's pretty fun. It was pretty fun. I don't know if I'll ever do it again. Probably not. I would if like I had a reason to. I don't think I have a reason to. If I was traveling, still had no homeless, but right now I have a lot of TikTok followers. People are helping me out with the motel. I don't see a reason to try to hop a train, but basically what I'm trying to say, it was a fun experience. It was a really fun experience. It's nothing you can really describe too well. It's something you can only experience riding on a freight train, and so, and in this journey, I actually do some more train hopping, and I actually have what they call a road dog in the homeless person traveler community, the train hopper community. I had a road dog for a trip. It was pretty nice, and I'm gonna tell you guys about that in part 4 of my life story. I don't know if this has been the most interesting addition to the series, but it is a step in the chronological order towards the present. So when we started off, I was born. Okay, we started part 1, explained to you my early life. Now almost 17 years old, almost 18 in like 4 or 5 months, setting out on a journey to go to California to pursue my dreams, and so part 4 is going to be out real soon, maybe even tomorrow. If you have any opinions, anything you want to ask me about or talk about or remark on, please comment, please like, please subscribe, please turn on notifications with that bell icon. like I said, I don't think this has been the most interesting part. I'm waiting for us to get well, the next part might be pretty interesting because this part I was basically explaining how, I went back home for a few months and then set out. Next part is going to be my whole journey from North Carolina, 17 years old, just homeless on my own 2 feet, making it all the way to California. And at one point I get a guitar, and that's a pretty cool story. So yeah, please watch the next one when it comes out, part 4. This has been part 3.